full of dreadlocks was shouting at the police from behind the yellow crime scene tape. "Hey, you hear that music?" he called in a loopy, wheezy voice. "You like that music? That my people music." Sampson met me outside one of the dilapidated row houses, and we went in together. "Just like bad old times," John said, shaking his head. "That why you here, Dragon Slayer? Are you nostalgic for the old days? Want to come back to the Washington PD?" I nodded and gestured around. "Yeah, I miss this. Bad homicide scenes in the middle of the night." "Bet you do, too." "I would." The building where the body had been found was boarded up in front, but it was easy enough for us to get inside. There was no front door. "This is Alex Cross," Sampson said to the patrolman standing just outside the open doorway. "You heard of him?" "This is the Alex Cross, brother." "Dr. Cross," said the man as he stepped aside to let us enter. "Gone," said John Sampson, "but not forgotten." Once we were in, the scene was sadly familiar and reprehensible. Garbage was strewn in the hallways, and the smell of decaying food and urine was overpowering. Maybe it was because I hadn't been inside one of these vacated rat traps in a while. Over a year now. We were told that the body was on the top floor, the third, so Sampson and I began to climb. "Dumping grounds," he muttered. "Yeah, I know. I remember the drill pretty well." "At least we don't have to visit the goddamn basement," Sampson grumped. "So why did you say you're here? I didn't catch that part." "I just missed hanging with you. Nobody calls me Sugar anymore." "Uh-huh. You Phoebes aren't into nicknames? So why are you here, Sugar?" Sampson and I had made our way to the third floor. There were Washington PD uniforms everywhere up there. This really was déjà vu all over again. I put on plastic gloves, and so did Sampson. I did miss working with him, and sadly this brought it all home, the good and the bad. We stopped outside the second door on the right just as a young black patrolman was leaving. He had his hand over his mouth, a white handkerchief wrapped over the fist. I think he was going to be sick any second. That part doesn't change either. "Hope he didn't barf all over our crime scene," Sampson said. "Goddamn rookies." Then we went inside. "Oh, man," I muttered. You see things like this over and over in homicide, but you never get used to it, and you don't forget the details, the sensations, the smells, the taste it leaves in your mouth. "He called it into us first," I told Sampson. "That's why I'm here." "Who's he asked. "You tell me," I said. We walked over closer to the body that lay on the bare wooden floor. Young woman, probably still in her teens, petite, pretty enough. Naked except for one platform hanging off the toes on her left foot. Golden ankle charm on her right foot. Her hands were tied behind her back with what looked like plastic cable. A black plastic bag had been stuffed inside her mouth. I'd seen this kind of murder before. Exactly this kind. So had Sampson. "Prostitute," Sampson sighed. "Patrolman seen her around on South Capitol. 18, 19 years old, maybe even younger." "So who is he?" It looked to me as if the girl's breasts had been sliced right off her chest. Her face had been attacked, too. A checklist of deviant behavior ran through my head, the kind of things I hadn't thought about for a while. Expressive aggression, check. Sadism, check. Sexualization, check. Offense planning, check. Check, check, check. It's Schaefer, John. It's the Weasel. He's back in Washington. But that's not the worst of it. I wish to hell it were. Chapter 40. We knew a bar that was open, so Sampson and I went for a beer after we left the slaughter scene on New Jersey Avenue. We were officially off duty, but I had my beeper clipped on. So did John. There were only 2 other guys drinking in the gin mill, so we pretty much had the place to ourselves. Didn't matter one way or the other. It was good just to be with John. I needed to talk to him. I really needed to talk to Samson about something. "You sure it's Schaefer?" he asked me, once we had our beers and some nuts in front of us. I told him about the disturbing tape I'd seen from Sunrise Valley, but not about the other threats, or the ransom. I couldn't, and that bothered me a lot. I'd never lied to Samson, and this felt like a lie. "It's him. No doubt about it." "That's messed up," John said. "The weasel. Why would he come back to Washington? He almost got caught here the last time." "Maybe that's why. The thrill of it, the challenge." "Yeah, and maybe he misses us." "I won't miss him this time. Put one right between his eyes." I sipped my beer. "Shouldn't you be home with Billy?" I asked. "It's a work night. Billy's cool with it. With my job. Her sister's staying with us for a while anyway. They're both asleep by now." "How's that working out? Married life. Billy's sister at the house." "I like Trina, so it's okay. Funny. Things I couldn't imagine getting used to aren't a problem. I'm happy. First time, maybe. Floating on a cloud, man." I grinned at Samson. "Ain't love grand?" "Yes, it is. You ought to try it again sometime." "I'm ready," I said, and smiled. "You think so? I wonder about that. Are you really ready?" "Listen, John, there's something I need to talk to you about." "Figured that out already. Something about those bombings. Then the murder of Thomas Weir. Schaefer back in town?" Samson looked into my eyes. "So, what is it?" "This is confidential, John. They've made a threat against Washington. It's pretty serious. We've been warned about an attack. They demanded a huge ransom to stop it." "Which can't be paid?" Samson asked. "The United States doesn't negotiate with terrorists." "I don't know about that. I'm not sure if anybody does, except maybe the president. I'm on the inside, but not that far inside. Anyway, now you know as much as I do." "And I should act accordingly." "Yeah, you should. But you can't talk about this with anybody. Not anyone. Not even Billy." Samson took my hand. "I got it. Thank you." Chapter 41. On the way home late that night, I was guilt-tripping and a little shaky about what I'd told Samson, but I felt I'd had no choice. John was my family, simple as that. Also, maybe I was on burnout because we were working 18 to 24-hour days. Maybe the stress was getting to me. There was a lot of disaster planning going on behind the scenes, but nobody I talked to knew where we were on the ransom demands. Everybody's nerves were frayed, including mine. About 12 hours were gone on our deadline. Other questions burned in my mind. Was Schaefer the one who had murdered and maimed the woman we'd found on New Jersey Avenue? I was almost sure he was, and Samson agreed. But why commit that type of grisly murder now? Why risk it? I sure as hell doubted it was a coincidence that the young woman's body had been dumped less than 2 miles from my house. It was late, and I wanted to think about something else, anything else, but I couldn't get my head off the case. I drove the old Porsche faster than I needed to on the mostly empty streets, knowing I had to focus on the driving. It didn't really work too well, though. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a few minutes. I tried to clear my head before I went inside. Things to do. I needed to give Jamila a call. It was only 11 on the coast. I felt as though my head would explode, and I knew when I'd felt this way before. The last time the weasel went on a killing spree in Washington. Only this was so much worse. I finally trudged inside the house, past the old piano on the sun porch. I thought about sitting down and playing. A little blues, Broadway. At 2 a.m? Sure, why not? I couldn't sleep anyway. The phone began to ring and I ran to get it. Oh, Jesus, who the hell? I snatched up the phone on the kitchen wall near the fridge. Hello? Cross. Nothing. And then a hang-up. Seconds later, the phone rang again. I picked up after one ring. Another hang-up. And another after that. I took the phone off the hook, set it on the counter inside Nana's oven mitt to muffle the sound. I heard a noise behind me. I turned around quickly. Nana was standing there in the doorway, all 5 feet 95 pounds of her. Her brown eyes were fired up. "What's wrong, Alex? What are you doing up?" she asked. "This isn't right. Who's calling the house this late at night?" I sat down at the kitchen table, and over some tea, I told Nana everything that I could. Chapter 42. The next day I was paired up with Monty Donnelly, which was good news for both of us. Our assignment was to gather information on Colonel Schaefer and the mercenaries being used in the attacks. Our timetable? Fast. Incredibly fast. Monty, as usual, already knew a lot about the subject, and she talked non-stop while she retrieved even more data for the case. Once Monty gets going, it's difficult to get her to stop. Almost impossible. The woman is relentless about facts being the way to truth. Mercenaries, the dogs of war, so-called. Mostly former soldiers from Special Forces. Delta Force, Army Rangers, SEALs, SAS if they're Brits. Many are totally legit, Alex, though they operate in a kind of legal netherworld. What I mean is that they aren't subject to the U.S. military's code of conduct or even our laws. Technically, they're subject to the laws of the countries where they serve, but some of those hotspots have piss-poor judicial systems, if they have any system at all. So they're pretty much on their own. That would appeal to Schaefer. Most mercenaries work for private companies now? Monty nodded. Yes, they do, Grasshopper. Private military companies, PMCs. Earn as much as $20,000 a month. Average probably closer to 3 or 4. Some of the larger PMCs have their own artillery, tanks, even fighter jets, if you can believe it. I can. These days I can believe anything. Hell, I even believe in the big bad wolf. Monty turned away from her computer screen and looked at me. I sensed that one of her famous stats was on the way. Alex, the Defense Department currently has over 3,000 contracts with U.S.-based PMCs. Contracts are valued at over $300 billion. You believe that? I whistled. Well, that sort of puts the wolf's demands in perspective, doesn't it? Pay the man, said Monty. Then we'll go catch him. It's not my call, but I don't entirely disagree. At least that could be a plan. Monty went back to her computer. Here's a tidbit on the weasel. Worked with an outfit called Main Force International. Listen to this. Offices in London, Washington, and Frankfurt. That got my attention. 3 of the targeted cities. What else do you have on Main Force? Let me see. Clients include financial institutions, oil, of course, precious stones. Diamonds? Are a mercenary's best friend. Schaefer was going under the name Timothy Heath. Worked in Guinea to free some mines taken over by the populace. Heath Schaefer was arrested in Guinea, charged with trying to bribe local officials. He had £1 million on him, cash, when he was arrested. How did he get out of that one? Says he escaped. No detail. No follow-up either. Odd. That's one thing the weasel's always been good at. Wiggling out of tight spots, getting away with it. Maybe that's why the wolf wanted him for this job. No, said Monty, and she turned and stared into my eyes. The wolf wanted him because Jeffrey Schaefer has gotten under